Is there to suspect the Klan?
Son, we've got 19 dead black children.
Premiering on Netflix in October 2017, Mindhunter was something that no one had seen before. It was a quiet, brooding, slow-burning crime series that showed us interviews in the cold FBI offices instead of the high-intensity car chases and shootouts we're accustomed to. The show didn't have a rushed storyline. It took its sweet time to lure us in. It didn't care if we were actively paying attention to the show because it knew that even without all of those, we were already hooked, following the clues that were sprinkled everywhere. This show is more about the psychological horror of the crimes committed and less about the action. Think of it like the Zodiac without the journalistic sheen on it, and David Fincher's idea worked. We were hooked. However, things did not go as well as we had hoped for the Mindhunter. After just 2 seasons, Mindhunter went dark in front of our eyes. Even though no formal cancellation notice or information came out, the main cast was officially released from their contracts by 2020. The heavily teased Season 3, which was going to focus on the BTK killer, was simply cast away and indefinitely shelved. And then the nail in the coffin appeared when Fincher finally came out in 2023 and said that there just weren't enough fans to justify the cost of making the show. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Uncuff him, please.
So now the question remains, what happened to Mindhunter? To understand that, we would have to go back to the very beginning of the show. The series is based on the very real-life accounts of FBI agents John E. Douglas and Robert Ressler. They are the pioneers in the field of criminal profiling. Mindhunter, set in the 1970s and early 80s, focuses on agents Holden Ford and Bill Tench as they attempt to study the minds of serial killers with the help of psychologist Wendy Carr. And all the criminals we see in the episodes, none of them were fictional. Each season, we meet a dramatized version of real-life serial killers like Charles Manson, Richard Speck, and Edmund Kemper. And since David Fincher is well known for his love for attention and details, he managed to get actors who look strikingly similar to their real-life counterparts. However, given his attention to detail, there was no way Fincher was going to simply stop there. He wanted to make the show as authentic as possible. So production for the show included an extremely meticulous recreation of that era. The outfits, the props, the wardrobe, and even the vehicles and signs were period accurate to the 1970s. To get the authentic feel of Midwestern America in the 1970s, the shooting was done in Pittsburgh to replicate the vibes. However, Fincher was far more obsessive about the finer things than anyone could have guessed. He didn't find all of these things good enough, so more additions were made, more changes were made, and sometimes he would end up shooting a scene up to 200 times just to get the precise emotion and the exact cadence that he wanted. Oftentimes, he would be seen rewriting dialogue between takes and tweaking lighting between shots. So you could say that this was not just for television. It was far greater than that, with almost a clinical precision of a neurosurgery. As you can guess, this led to the budget for the show ballooning. Industry insiders estimated that each episode cost somewhere between $3 to $4 million to produce. And that number is without the post-production work done on the episodes or the extended shoot schedules that Fincher imposed on his crew. This is what led to Fincher coming clean in 2023, explaining that this show was a very expensive series, and since it was not as popular, it didn't make sense to invest that much money into it. Now, I know you're ready to storm this comment section with your fingers furiously fluttering over your keyboard, debating if Mindhunter was popular enough and that Fincher should have continued the show. But here's the thing, Mindhunter was for Netflix, and after 2019, Netflix has been changing its priorities when it comes to which shows to keep and which shows to trash. We often whine about how good shows don't get more than a season, but here we have another Love Island popping out of nowhere. That's because we're making TikToks about Love Island or Temptation Island or whatever new dating show Netflix has in store for us. Netflix cares about the virality. If the show is talked about often, discussed often, and and made incredibly popular by just the fan base alone, Netflix is more than happy to invest in it more. And Mindhunter was not a show like that. It was not a show that you could keep running in the background while you scrolled through TikTok or did your chores. You would have to sit down to watch the Mindhunter completely. Every episode was crafted meticulously to trigger your brain into thinking, just one more. Everything about the show was methodical and measured, and as you can guess, for a lot of the casual viewers, Mindhunter was a bit too much. But that is what makes Mindhunter so special. We don't get any of those cheap jump scares or melodrama that we saw in The Blacklist. Instead, every time the profiler and the killer would face off, it was like a chess match being played. The psychological confrontations happening in the room were felt by everyone, even though we weren't in the room. That's why a lot of people end up remembering that moment when Kemper offered Ford a headless hug in Season 1. It really wasn't about what you saw on the screen or what was said in the scene. It was about what you understood. In one of his interviews, Fincher described the show as a man losing his virginity to psychosexual sadism. Hearing that at first would make you laugh. The whole sentence sounds a bit jarring, doesn't it? However, we watch with horror as Fincher's words end up being true. Holden Ford started out as a bright-eyed idealist, but by the time the second season ended, he was a disturbed and disconnected profiler, which shocked everyone. That was not the story arc I was prepared to handle. It holds the mirror to your face, effectively explaining that if you study monsters a bit too much, you'll end up seeing them in your reflection too at some point. But the one who stole the spotlight in the show was the BTK killer. From the very first episode, fans of the show saw several flashes of this middle-aged man doing ritualistic shenanigans in suburban Kansas. He would dress up in lingerie, tie knots, burn evidence, and a lot more. Soon enough, fans connected the dots and realized this mustached man was none other than Dennis Rader, one of the most enigmatic serial killers in America. His presence was felt throughout the series' runtime, and the second season's post-credit scene showed us BTK stalking his next victim. So we had high hopes for the third season of the show, which was going to bring him into the foreground, something Holt McCallany confirmed in his interview. However, that arc will never come to fruition. It is gone with the show. Canceled. Obviously, Fincher was not expecting the studios to cancel his show. He wanted to tease BTK throughout the first two seasons because it was a structured storyline. The show's main arcs happened in front of us while something far more dangerous was simmering in the background. It was terrifying to watch the FBI starting to refine their tools while a real serial killer kept slipping past their fingers. The payoff of being teased for 2 whole seasons was supposed to be absolutely terrifying and ironic. However, the show never got to reach that point, let alone cash in on that check. This is what upset a lot of fans. They knew they were going to get something great out of the final chapter of the story, but then the show got canceled, frustrating even the bigger Mindhunter defender to no end. With the story this close to finishing, you have to wonder, why didn't Netflix just stick it out? I mean, surely a mega corporation like that could have stayed around for another season, especially when it can make the umpteenth Temptation Island for the viewers. Well, the thing was all about timing. The second season of The Mindhunter came out in August 2019. Soon after that, Netflix started to make big moves in its content strategy. Netflix wanted to focus on global productions, and the role of the algorithm started gaining more prominence behind the scenes, especially when it came to greenlighting shows. Basically, a TLDR of the whole situation is that Netflix wanted to make cheaper shows that would appeal to a wider audience. And as you may have guessed, Mindhunter is none of those. The show did not pull in big numbers, not like Stranger Things, Narcos, or Tiger King did. No matter how hard you try, Mindhunter is not something memorable. It was too good for that, and that made it too good for continuation. Another factor that played a bigger role in the whole thing was bandwidth. So in 2020, David Fincher was working on Mank, the passion project where he focused on the screenwriter of Citizen Kane. The film was clearly made for the Oscars with its black and white shots and old Hollywood reverence. While Fincher has never said that he chose Mank over Mindhunter, there was no way he was going to do both at the same time. So he focused on Mank. And by the time the film came out, most of the original cast of The Mindhunter had been let go of their contracts. At that moment, Netflix called it a temporary hold. But there is gossip, rumors, and writing on the wall, if you want to call it that, saying that Fincher, the main man who created this show from scratch, had moved on, and with all the red markings on their spreadsheet, Netflix did not plan on bringing him back. Then came the dreaded 2023 interview. Fincher went on record and said the things that fans were most worried about. Netflix was simply not interested in pursuing the third season. He didn't sound bitter about it, more like he had resigned himself to the condition completely. He understood that the times had changed. He knew that the only way he could continue with his work was if he made it more pop or brought the budget down. However, neither of those ideas was feasible. Mindhunter was not meant for a cheap budget show or with the whole popification in mind. Mindhunter is not Criminal Minds. It was a show about psychosexual sadism, institutional decay, and child killers, and it treated those grave topics with sincere respect. That's probably why Mindhunter fans are so loyal to the show. In the vast world of crime dramas, Mindhunter was different, unique. It was something that should not have existed in the first place because of how the algorithm had carved out the media landscape. But there it was. It was a drama that did not pander to anyone. It was a true crime show, without any of the sensationalization that we've become so used to. It was the FBI procedure that was anti-procedural, not shying away from showing the limitations and faults of the systems. Another huge thing that's worth loving about the show has to be the acting. Jonathan Groff, mostly well known for his voice work and Broadway, gave us an extremely talented but unsettling Holden Ford. His descent into the damaged shell was evident. We could see it in his body language, his dialogue, and his tics. Parallelly, we have Holt McCallany. He gave Tench an intensity that was extremely grounded, a chain-smoking dad who was being eaten alive by the work that he had to do every day somehow ended up touching everyone's heart. And Anna Torv's Wendy Carr was just as brilliant as she was repressed. She is a strong female lead I can get behind, quietly working her way through an all-male workplace. As season 2 rolled around, the characters got pushed further into darkness. We follow the Atlanta child murders as the main arc, and we see how the community gets impacted as a whole by these crimes, especially since the system in place cannot protect black children because it was not built for them. This was a bold move on Fincher's part. With no easy answers, we watched our team navigate the murkier grounds as the killings got crazier, cases got harder, killers got more manipulative, and the team got more fractured. The seasons were building to something. We could all feel the tension winding up tightly. The noose around the character's neck grew tighter by the second, and just when we thought we could get something, poof, everything was gone. The tragedy of Mindhunter is that you can see clearly that the showrunner and the writers had already laid out the roadmap for the show. It was not a show that was getting cooked up along the way. There were ideas, clear-cut ones, and the groundwork for the future episodes was being laid from the very beginning, especially with the BTK killer's story being interwoven with almost every episode. His whole spiel, double life, the secrecy, everything was teasing the final confrontation between the FBI's new profiling unit and the most enigmatic and elusive serial killer in American history. This was supposed to show the decay inside the society as a whole. We also saw Tench's life slowly falling apart. Brian, his adopted son, had either witnessed or been a part of a child's death, and that trauma was breaking apart the family. According to McCallany, Tench's personal life falling apart was supposed to connect with his psychological profiling work, showing how every line was getting blurred when BTK's crime became public. The main focus would have been on the irony that while they were chasing monsters, their lives were falling apart completely. But with the cancellation, the story seems to be suspended in time. We are effectively stopped in the middle of a sentence, not knowing how it was supposed to end. For fans of the show, this felt worse than just a mere cancellation. It was a betrayal. Despite its short runtime, there is no denying the influence of the show still lingers even to this day. Mindhunter has achieved cult status. We have active Reddit threads, even to this day, dissecting every episode and scouring the background for clues. There have been several petitions asking for season 3 of the show, even though Fincher himself has made it clear that season 3 would never happen. Critics have often revisited the show, comparing it against other prestige crime dramas. A lot of people refer to Mindhunter as the smartest crime show since the first season of True Detective, and it makes sense. The performance, the dialogue, the cinematography, everything still stands up. In fact, when compared to other Netflix shows that were produced during the same time, I should say that Mindhunter has held up a lot better. Unlike other algorithm-chasing shows that fade away after a year, Mindhunter feels timeless, with central themes like limitations of law enforcement, the nature of evil, and the cost of obsession. How could it not? These topics will always be relevant. And over time, the relevance will simply increase when we compare things at present with when the show was running. The truth is that Mindhunter was one of the greatest shows of the early prestige streaming era. Netflix was still willing to take risks on quality content. They didn't care so much about watch time or completion rate. The show was greenlit with a full creative freedom, and the moment the creative freedom was replaced with economic consolidation, things changed. This shift between taking risks on artistic shows and binge content is not just something Netflix has done. Almost all platforms and networks would much rather focus on something that is sticky and not something that would leave a lasting impact on the fans. So shows like Mindhunter, shows that are meticulously crafted with slow character build-ups and that throw challenges to the audiences, are seen more like a liability than an asset. Another thing that can be said about this topic is how the show was marketed to the audience. And by that, I mean Netflix did not market it at all. Netflix normally pushes its shows down your throat with ad campaigns, merch drops, and YouTube recap stuff to spoon-feed the audience and push the name of the show into the radar of all people, right? But not in the case of Mindhunter. Either you heard about it from someone, or you found it while on Netflix. Or you probably never even heard of it. The entire show is built on an anti-Netflix formula. It has no buzz. It's all built on a game of telephone. And that makes fans very protective of the show. The show was exclusive, something special that only you and a handful of others watched, something that you found on your own. The fandom of Mindhunter doesn't have people who just want to be entertained. It has people who want to understand and think about the themes of the show and the characters and draw parallels between themselves and the characters. And this brings us back to the question we all started off with. What happened to Mindhunter? Well, the bitter truth is that this is what happens when art and commerce collide. The show was brilliant and daring. It was a diamond in the rough, planted directly in the middle of a system that didn't care about that kind of brilliance. And that's why Mindhunter is where it is today. The economy changed, and Fincher moved on along with the industry. These are all surface-level answers. The real truth is that Mindhunter was simply underappreciated, and fans didn't enjoy the way the series ended. We didn't get any conclusion. It was stolen from us. You would think fans are simply frustrated about the cliffhangers, and sure we are, but we're more frustrated about the fact that we would probably never get something along the lines of Mindhunter for a really long time. This show had a quality to it, a meticulous craft behind it that is just not common anymore. Fincher took Mindhunter to a whole different level. His framing, lighting, and minimalistic dialogue, these weren't just artistic or aesthetic choices. Every shot, every lighting, and every dialogue served a purpose. It either conveyed the tones or the themes. Each episode took us on a journey down the minds of the people we usually don't think about, and that made the whole thing more horrifying. Sure, we have no jump scares, but the eeriness of it all, the unsettling feeling at the back of your neck, simply increases the more you go down the rabbit hole of Mindhunter. Every true crime show effectively tells us one thing: be afraid of the serial killers. But not Mindhunter. It wanted us to understand them. It wanted us to sit with the serial killer in a small room with no one to save us and simply peer into their brain, traverse into their mind, and understand what made the serial killers the way they were. Very few crime dramas have dared something audacious like this, and Mindhunter walked straight into the abyss with us. Ever since Mindhunter got canceled, something lay barren inside the hearts of the countless fans the show has gained over the years. But that's the best part about this kind of show. When this kind of show brings you to the abyss will stare back, and the abyss sure did. We saw subreddits tearing down every scene of Mindhunter, effectively breathing new life into the show. They talk about future storylines which will never happen, but keep the hope alive. We have fan videos breaking down every character arc and even speculative scripts talking about what could happen in Season 3 that will never happen. The obsession with Mindhunter is there, and it keeps growing. Several fans have revisited the show, and that's why it would not be uncommon for me to say that Mindhunter was ahead of its time. It's a little ironic, as it's a period piece, but you get what I mean. Fans have praised time and time again the psychological depths Mindhunter has taken them to, and the structural ambition of the show. The thing that made the show special was how unique it was amongst all the other shows airing at the time, and this is what effectively sealed its fate for good. With the cancellation, we lost the deep dive into BTK we had been waiting for. The fact that the man with a very mundane, normal life also happens to be the most terrifying murderer in the country, is truly something interesting that we will never get to see. We lost how Wendy Carr was going to navigate her isolated position in the Bureau, both as a woman and as a lesbian, especially in an era where no one would take her seriously. We lost the catastrophe that was Tench's home life, with his son's involvement in the child's death and the dark character evolution of Holden Ford. We also lost what TV could be when Mindhunter was canceled. Mindhunter was proof of what TV could be. How shows don't need to be memeable or bingeable. Shows can have time and effort put behind them. They deserve depth and patience, and Mindhunter proved that when someone is willing to do that, the fans are more than happy to follow along. Over the years, the growing love for Mindhunter has not been a complete waste. Every once in a while, we see interviews pop up here and there with a producer, a cast member, or Fincher himself suggesting that maybe there is some hope for Mindhunter, and maybe that door isn't completely shut. But with Fincher booked for other shows, Netflix is moving on, and the industry is choosing to chase hits and not prestige, so hope wears thin. Still, we can hold on to hope. We've seen well-loved shows return after several years because of the fans. So maybe when the timing is right and fans are loud enough, Mindhunter 2 could return. And even if it didn't, we all already felt its impact. Creators use it as a reference point. Writers talk about it in pitch meetings, and cinematographers break down every shot of Mindhunter in film school. Mindhunter has created a legacy. It's the benchmark of crime drama done right, and it's influencing the next wave of creators on how to do things right, even if the industry tells them to make things cheaper and simpler. The heart of the show is not about profiling serial killers, it's about the cost of understanding evil, the cost of obsession, control, and the tension between what is possible and what is profitable. The show took darker turns than no one had ever dared before, and because of that, the show met its demise. As beloved fans, we would love to imagine an alternate universe where Mindhunter gets the full 5-season arc that Fincher originally wanted. We get to see everything we've been wanting, from Wendy's quiet fight against the workplace to Tench's family falling apart and bleeding into work, while Holden starts to become something completely irreversible emotionally. But sadly, we do not live in that kind of world. We live in a world where Love Island, Temptation Island, and Tiger King dominate the score, while Mindhunter and other shows like that go away without a peep. Maybe that's a commentary in itself. The thing is, Mindhunter forces you to sit in the discomfort it creates. It asks you to listen closely and draw conclusions from things that were not said and from stolen glances. But that's not the current market, is it? The narrative restraint in Mindhunter was practically radical in comparison to what flies for TV nowadays. Fincher's comment about the show being psychosexual sadism does not attract Billboard or BuzzFeed quizzes. It was about the deep human rot and decay that lives within people who, on the surface, seem perfectly like us. That's what fascinated the viewers. It also helped that Mindhunter respected its audience a lot. It never softened the blows or pandered to anything. It knew the audience would keep up, make conclusions, and feel the emotional beats that it wanted you to feel. That's why we mourn the loss of Mindhunter. This video is about mourning Mindhunter, one of the finest shows of the past decade that did not get the ending that it deserved. It did not fail creatively. It died because the world around it shifted, patience ran out, and changes came about for the worse. Perhaps that's also why we love Mindhunter. It was a show about people finding the rational answer in the midst of chaos, following rational systems which became irrational the deeper they ventured. The show's about how some things cannot simply be categorized as data points or categories because sometimes things defy categorization. So now, we keep the flame of the show alive, not because of nostalgia, but because of respect for what the show tried to do. No one had ever tried it before. Mindhunter did not fail. It was failed by an industry that forgot its priorities. An industry that chose virality and memes over something that could last for decades. But Mindhunter, just like the evil they talked about, will never die. Mindhunter would remain on the streaming platforms, garnering more fans as people come across miss it. And just like Holden's case files, one by one, things would fall in the right places. And maybe one day, when the economy is right, someone will say, why don't we make more of this? But until that day comes, if that day comes, Mindhunter will remain what it is, a brilliant slow burn masterpiece and a reminder that sometimes the greatest monsters are the ones we never saw in the first place. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.